Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. The current global economic challenge has thrown a lot of economies around the world into some challenges. But in the midst of this, where every economy is looking inward on how they can stabilize things, how does the company Ghana plays in attracting foreign direct investment in all these challenges? Well, he is the country's chief investment promoter, ensuring that in these challenging times, Ghana is still placed on that global radar when it comes to attracting foreign direct investment. George Wiafe is my guest, Chief Executive of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center on PM Express Business Edition. So Grant, how are you doing? It's been a long time and an interesting time, some would say.
Yes, interesting times. Indeed, I think you've used the right word, interesting times, because as you just started mentioned, there are challenges globally. You know, some of the, first of all, I don't think the world recovered fully from the pandemic, and then suddenly political disruptions and turmoil across various regions have sort of amplified some of the problems that countries have. And therefore, these are truly trying times. But for me, I see trying times also as an opportunity for us, for various reasons. First of all, you know, post-COVID and post the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, a lot of countries are looking for new opportunities. They are looking for new friends and new places to operate. There's a lot of what we call onshoring, reshoring, friendshoring, that is moving your factories across borders to where it makes strategic sense, both politically and economically. And so that, in a real sense, has created a new emerging opportunity globally, where I think Africa is the main pivot. And Ghana positions itself as a spearhead of African economic emancipation and empowerment. It seems to be leading that charge in a very creditable way.
Mr. Grant, how easy has it been for you? How challenging has it been for you in times like this when you hear America talking about America first? Everybody's looking at how they can help the economy recover. There was data I was looking at, Economic Times, and it's talking about the fact that Germany, and I know we'll be going that later, that when you look at the EU zone, they are one of the least countries that's been able to recover strongly post-COVID and all the rest.
Right.
Every economy, every developed economy is looking at how they can turn the economy around. How easy has it been for you in these times in convincing these other development partners, these investors out there, that Ghana is the place to do business?
You know, well, I'm not sure easy is the word to start with.
Yeah, maybe you have the magic wand.
But also, easier for us than it should be, only because, I mean, the country in itself is endowed with significant resources that are quite important for many other countries. We are resource rich, very much like the continent. The fact that we have gold, diamonds, bauxite, iron ore, manganese, salt, oil and gas, and more recently lithium, makes us particularly interesting in resetting the global economy, especially in these times of climate change, where these minerals, most of them called transition minerals, are in Ghana. And they are required for Industry 4.0, going into now Industry 5.0, the digital age. And so they are very important. But beyond that, I mean, Ghana also is very well imbued with significant agro resources. I mean, about 60% of our land mass is a possible agricultural land. I mean, it's estimated that we have some 13 million acres of very fertile land which can be used for agriculture. So in terms of the resources, we are very well positioned. In terms of the policy orientation too, we seem to have demonstrated very clearly that we want to establish an economy of transformation. First, by ensuring that we educate our kids to be able to take over an economy of a value-added economy by providing them free education at the senior high school level. And I keep saying that in the medium term, the minimum education of the average Ghanaian will be high school education. That is very significant for transforming an economy into a highly complex and sophisticated one, against what we've known from long, where we just dig up our resources and export them in their raw form. But beyond that too, we have clearly set ourselves on the path of transformation with value addition. And the President's view that we should stop exporting our raw materials and resources and add value to them before exporting is very instructive, not only for Ghana, but the African continent. Because the bane of African economics is the fact that we just export all our raw materials and import finished goods from those very same raw materials, which hasn't done well, doesn't augur well for transforming wealth on the continent. And for us, where there's a huge youth bracket, there is a need to create a new narrative for the African continent. And I think Ghana has led it very well with the maxim of Ghana Beyond Aid, which now resonates mainly as an Africa Beyond Aid. That's the easier part for us. The difficulty is that you are competing with everybody else.
Yeah.
And clearly, as I started talking about the difficulties globally, every country is now looking for opportunities. They are looking for opportunities internally, they are looking for opportunities externally. And interestingly, this year, and maybe from the other half of last year, have become our most engaging time. I mean, it's never a dull moment, and you yourself can testify. I mean, you've been trying to get me to sit down this afternoon. I have not had a minute to myself today since I got to the office around 8 o'clock. There are investors coming in, there are queries coming in, there are letters asking you to be here to speak at this conference because they need you to come and talk about the Ghana opportunity. So it's very difficult. And some of the countries that you are competing with are the same countries that you are expecting to have investors from. I mean, I just came back from the World Investment Forum, where clearly sustainable finance is the key buzz to ensure that we achieve the SDGs, which we all admit we're falling way behind. But there's a tacit recognition that every country is ratcheting up its investment promotion endeavors. I mean, and you'd be surprised. I mentioned like countries like China. You should have seen the sort of pavilion they had.
They're equally competing for FDIS.
Oh, they are competing. The US is competing.
But Mr. Graham, one would ask, what are these investors, are these business outside responding to your calls? Because are they responding? Yes,
indeed. And I say so because, like I said, I mean, it's like never a dull moment now. You are constantly absorbed from morning till night. I mean, there are just so many requests to appear to speak about Ghana at this conference, at that conference, and sometimes you physically.
But it's not just about the talk. I'm saying, are they coming in? Are they now taking steps to move beyond just to talk?
Indeed.
That coming in to prospect and establish those firms.
Over the past 2 days, in fact, the past 3 days, I've had to receive delegations in our conference room. 2 days ago, we had a good sort of breakfast business summit with a group of Swedish and Danish investors who are looking at repositioning in Ghana for very good reasons, because Ghana seems to be an emerging gateway into the African continent, which is significant. 1.4 billion people, the largest tariff-free market, so they need a landing spot. This morning, we had a delegation from South Africa, led by their Minister for Works and Housing, or Human Settlement, as they call them, and our own Minister, Honorable Francis Sensu-Boakye. So, you know, they are coming, and I'm sure you're aware that next week we actually have the German Chancellor here coming with a very high-profile group of business people.
To do what?
They are looking at the Ghana opportunity. And like I said, Ghana, I think we have been able to probably scream loudest about what you can, the partnerships we want. And so Ghana is extremely high on the radar of many of these countries.
I know the German government is very strong when it comes to energy support, and even under the fund program.
Absolutely.
So what are they coming to do? I mean, is it just the normal talk shop, drink
no,
and then exchange pleasantries and have the pictures and we're off back in our plane to Germany?
People assume that when people travel, is because they are traveling.
The cup of tea and the coffee.
Absolutely
the Brazilian
not.
Coffee.
First of all, it's expensive. First of all, it's weary. I mean, on your person. And if I tell you some of the very rigorous routines that I've had to do, flying on flights more than 15 hours, do 3 meetings, get on another flight, go to another country, do 4 or 5 meetings, do a business session. You don't have a day's rest. You get on the plane. You're coming back home. Or you're going somewhere. It's not easy. But they are coming because they've identified the opportunities. I mean, today, when we're talking about human settlement, we had a number of construction firms that came along. They're looking for partnerships with Ghanaians in the real estate space, in the construction space, because they see the opportunity. We have a housing deficit, but we also are a country that our GDP growth seems to have been in excess of the regional average and even the global average. So
that is a very interesting, because some are saying that if you compare to our peers post-COVID, Ghana is still lagging behind, and therefore, what are we offering to these investors? Who do you think that lagging behind in terms of growth, in terms of inflation, in terms of all those indicators?
Yes,
if I'm a Saudi businessman, maybe I would choose Ivory Coast over Ghana.
Because they look at opportunity. They don't look at the now. For most smart investors, they don't look at it. The future is much more important than the present. And if they see that you are making the efforts to ensure that you have sustainability going forward, they identify what you present.
And Ghana has that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because the concern is that things are very challenging, right? And therefore,
but things are challenging everywhere.
Ghana ahead among our peers to a place to do business. The Saudi investor, the German investor will look at other countries compared to Ghana.
Yeah, so why aren't they there and they are here?
Maybe they are just prospecting.
No. Why? Ghana has had relationships with Germany for many years. Sweden and Denmark, we've had relationships for many years. South Africa, one of our stronger partners in Africa. It's not that they are coming to prospect. They know. And that's what I'm telling you. Very often, they don't, when they move and they come, and some people are coming with a chancellor, they're not coming to prospect. They know exactly why they are coming.
So what are they coming here? Is it about the energy discussion?
Energy is one. There's also manufacturing. There's also agro-processing. There's also technology. And Ghana seems to have taken the lead in demonstrating that we have the space to partner with credible global partners and bringing them into the continent to do business. I mean, imagine if you had 5 global players come invest in Ghana. Do you know how many potential jobs it will create? Do you know how much more it will engage us to invest for trade, and how we can use Ghana as a launchpad into the other parts of the continent? And so it's not, people just don't come.
So I get from you that despite the challenges that we are going through, Ghana still stands tall among the investment space.
Absolutely.
That this is the place they want to do business.
Absolutely. I mean, our conversations with the IMF occurred, and some of the sign-offs occurred in record time. Why do you think that is? Because they know, they understand the Ghana story historically. I mean, we are a country that has gone through many cycles of boom and bust, but what it is Ghana always is able to overcome the issues and then take a step forward. Prior to COVID, sadly, we saw a leap in our GDP growth rates to an average of 7% in the 3 years preceding COVID. Even during the pandemic, when many countries were in recession, we did not go into recession. We still had positive growth. Never mind that it was much less than we had projected. By 2021, we still saw some significant GDP growth. And somehow the expenditures that we had spent, we had engaged into rectifying our economy, in itself created challenges which we are now confronting. Now, having concluded with the IMF on a program, there is much more confidence that, well, Ghana will make it. And it's just not that. It's looking at the future and looking at the opportunity that there is, and looking at where the policy direction is.
So if I get from you, these investors are rather looking at the outlook than just the now. And that has been the pull factor for them to come in the midst of all these global challenges.
And also historically what the country has done. And being a spearhead of, from the historical spearhead of political emancipation when we had independence, and we triggered, a lot of Afro-optimism on the continent that led to a lot of countries going independent. And to today, Ghana also spreading the rhetoric of a change in the narration of Africa, from a Ghana beyond aid, saying that we are moving from aid to trade, resonates very clearly on the African continent. That has been able to also attract us to set up the African Continental Free Trade Headquarters in Ghana. Virtually tells the story that Ghana is a spearhead in the transformation story of Africa. But it's just not that. It's that Ghana has something special about it. Sometimes I find it difficult to put my finger on it. But we have young people, I mean, today, in the digital world and in the technology space, Ghana has emerged as one of the countries identified to have potential for scale up, much more than many of the other countries who were way ahead of us. Today, we are seeing a lot of startups in Ghana actually attract global capital. Those things are very important. But not only that, the fact that we have political stability.
That is also helping.
It's key. It's not just helping, it's key.
Mr. Grant,
Many of the countries that you mentioned, they've gone ahead.
But they are struggling politically.
Yes, they are struggling. Ghana somehow has been able to sell itself as a politically stable country with a great love for the rule of law and democracy. All these are points that are very important for the investor and investment attraction. Apart from that, I think at the GIPC, we've ratcheted up our efforts. We tell our story better. Remember, one of Africa's problems that we've never really told our story.
Yeah.
At GIPC today, we are on almost every social media platform. Sometimes I get calls and requests from people, and as far as Kazakhstan, Latvia.
Come to Ghana.
Yes, wanting to come to Ghana. They see an opportunity. They see an entry point into Ghana to the African continent. And least but not the last is the fact that Ghana, and we always say we are in the center of the world.
Yeah.
We are the one country that is closest to the geographical center of the world on latitude 0 and longitude 0. So even logistic-wise, we are so well positioned that, from Ghana to any of the important markets directly is less than 8 hours. If you go directly, even the US, if we were to fly from here to Atlanta, it will be about 7 hours, but we go up there. The only markets that are way beyond 8 hours from us is Asia. But in terms of logistics, Ghana is very well positioned. Today, we potentially have the largest container port in Ghana, at Tema, that with a potential of 3.7 million TEUs, larger than some of the ports in most of the ports in Africa. So we are doing certain things very right, and now we are even doing a bit more by looking at investment regulatory framework and see how we can make it more attractive, not just for foreign direct investors, but indigenous investors.
More to the Mr. Graham, but when we come back also, how has the IMF program helped in making things easier for the investment attraction? And also the FDI's numbers, quite some interesting numbers there, which I want to get more details for you. This is PM Expert Business Edition as we look at investment attraction in the wake of the global economic challenge, and how can Ghana still be the preferred investment destination for the region. This is PM Express Business Edition. Be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition, and how can Ghana attract the required foreign direct investment in the current global economic challenge? How are we fixing things right in the economy so that the foreigners and even the Ghanaian firms as well can enjoy the environment to do business? George Wiafe Grant, the Chief Executive of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, and getting more details from him. How did the fund program turn the corner for the Ghana Investment Promotion Center?
It's very interesting.
It made it easier because some are saying that things were that bad or challenging for this economy if the fund program had not come in.
You know, there are two types of investors, first of all. There are the debt capital markets investors who lend the country money. Then, of course, there are the investors who actually come directly and invest into opportunities in the market. Most of them are private sector investors who come in to do stuff. Like, for example, I'm sure you've heard of a new refinery, Central Refinery, which is a major refinery, approximately about $2 billion. Why would they come to Ghana at this time? Because they recognize certain positives, compelling positives about Ghana. And I dare say that concluding with the IMF gave quite a number of investors the confidence that, well, yeah, I mean, this is a country that is on the track to ensure.
Did you see any uptick in the request and the movement? Now people
I'll
moved
tell you
on
something
from
very
here.
interesting. A couple of years, some of the years back, when we thought that, in fact, not when we thought, when UNCTAD had declared that global FDI was going to drop by 42%, particularly affecting Africa, we saw FDI numbers that surprised us, about $2 billion. And it's because of the country's positioning. Now that we've signed off with the IMF, I mean, when I go out, a lot of investors don't ask that question anymore. They just assume that, well, yeah, you're doing the right things to ensure that your economy becomes more stable and has more opportunity which can be accessed.
So it has helped.
Yes, it has helped. One of Ghana's strong points is that we emphasize partnerships for linkages and trade. We emphasize partnerships. And the fact that we are also moving away from what was a rudimentary economic structure into one of value addition and perhaps higher, technical inputs is also critical for a lot of people. For example, I mean, we have made quite a lot of overtures about manufacturing in Ghana. Why? Because we look at the African market, 1.4 billion people. It's comparable to China, which is about 1.45, and comparable to India, which is about 1.47. Now, it's the African market and the CFTA is tariff-free. Yeah. So if we get you to come and manufacture in Ghana, you can export to anywhere on the continent without the tariffs, which makes you a bit more than if you were to export from Europe right into Africa, because you have to pay the taxes. So we have a strategy, a clear strategy of repositioning Ghana as the entry point into the African continent. And beyond that too, I mean, very often I'm told that on the West African continent, if you are looking for capable human capital, Ghana is a place that you are likely to find it, because we put a premium on education. And having established a program to ensure that your people, at least, and I did say in the medium term, the minimum level of education will be high school education, augurs well for the investor, because then they know that in the future they can find the competent people to run their companies here. They don't have to bring foreigners to run it. And I'm seeing that. A lot of the foreign direct investors who come in, after a year or two, when they bring in their quotas, they ask their people to go back and they employ Ghanaians to run the companies. It's easier for them, it's cheaper for them, and they find the competence here.
Mr. What would you tell those who would argue that the best form of convincing these investors and even making your work more easier is stabilizing the economy and greatly improving the business environment? The economy is stable. If it costs 30 minutes to register a business, light cost of credit, all those things are done right, you'd be sitting in the office and just receiving calls every day for people.
Well, you would. But remember, you must have the opportunity.
But someone's saying that because you don't have those things, it has to do a lot more convincing, a lot of talk on your part to convince them on the outlook.
You do.
And that is where we should focus more, some would say.
Yes, but you can only do that when you have the opportunity available. If you don't have the opportunity and you have all those things there, who will still come into your country? They only come and live there and not do anything.
Power, access to power, registering business within 30 minutes.
Yeah, but all those are in transition. Those are things that we are pursuing.
Haven't we kept too long?
No. I mean, when people say, well, we have kept too long, you are comparing
registering business, some will say.
There are reasons why you have to do it in the way that we've done it in the past. Now, once we've done that and we see that there's a better way to do it, then you do the necessary reforms to improve upon it. And mind you, every economy is different. You know, I mean, I had an argument, a very academic argument with somebody who was talking about why in the UK they are doing this, why aren't you doing that in Ghana? And I told them, you know, the UK had free labor to develop a lot of things that we didn't have for many years. So did the US. And they've been able to develop on that. Today, many of the countries that developed on hydrocarbons are telling us in Africa that
green energy.
We should be
green.
We should go green. Therefore, we shouldn't bring in our oil, etc., etc.
And even taxing some of these that we bring to the
economy.
Economy.
So there are challenges with every economy. The fact that I didn't do it 20 years ago doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it now. Yeah. And if you say, "Oh, but we've kept too long,"
because Mr. Grant, we heard about Ghana, the rising star of Africa.
And still is the rising star of Africa.
And some are saying
maybe
that
you should
the
look,
leader.
Yes, maybe you should go to some of the other countries.
In some of these spaces, Mr. Grant.
But there is progress going on. Progress goes step by step.
Haven't we kept too long, Mr. Grant?
No, I don't think so. That's not that you have kept too long. Are you a billionaire?
I'm not.
Why? If that's the way you just look at this, you kept too long, then with your intention, you should have been by now. No. But it doesn't happen like that. You go through a number of processes, you go through a number of changes, you go through a number of things that you yourself have to do. And then you get to that point. And the fact that we didn't do them before. Today, we are setting the pace for industrialization with our one district, one factory policy. We are setting the pace in modernizing our agriculture with planting for food and jobs. We are setting the pace again for changing a significant narrative of educating our people on the continent with a free senior high school policy. Those are all steps that you take.
Because the fears that other countries are catching up.
But
leading the road for others to come. Other countries.
But Ghana is also leading the road for other countries to copy. Do you know how many times that other countries come and look at Ghana and say that, wow, you guys have the right policies. Let's embrace them and follow, because these policies are transformational. That's the way you should look at it. Nothing, we all didn't start at ground zero and they said, ready, steady, go. And everybody runs, and some countries went way ahead, other countries didn't. What you don't have somebody else has it. What you have, somebody wishes for it. The stability, the political stability in Ghana. Do you know how many countries would have loved to have that stability? But they don't. We have it. The democracy that we have. Do you know how many countries would have loved to have it? But they don't. We have it. So there are many things too that we have that others don't have. And if you were asking this question, you should have asked them, why don't they have democracy? Why don't they have stability? Because we are different.
But Mr. Back to the question about making your work very easier, and that when all these things are done firmly, it makes your work a little bit more easier. Convincing these investment partners out there about Ghana must be the preferred place to do business.
I wouldn't say easier. It creates a better foundation for you. Simplistically, yes, you're right. It makes it easy because then, I mean, for the investor, you don't then need to convince him about those things because
the numbers are there. It tells everything.
Yeah, the numbers will tell everything. And so, yes, you want a very stable place. You want access to cheap energy, power, etc. But power is expensive. You don't get up one day and there's power. You have to develop. You have to invest in it. That's how it happens. Health it's expensive. You have to invest in it. And if you look at the nature of our economy, that is a reason why the president has clearly focused his attention on transforming the old narrative of exporting all our raw materials and resources and building a new economy of value addition and productivity. Because what that does is it then moves you from the lower end of the value chain to the higher ends of the value chain. I can tell you, processed, I may have the figures wrong, but I'm told that for example, and I'll use this just roughly, if you look at cocoa, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, about 60% plus of the world's cocoa beans. Annually, that's arguably just a $6 billion economy. Chocolate, in the past year, projected at 140 billion. And the chocolate is not produced there, it's produced in other markets. Right? And that just tells you that we needed to change from just exporting our beans into adding value, because then we'll be part of that 140 billion and not just 6 billion. You know, so there is a lot of work that you ought to do. We need to have, we needed many years back, 20 years back, probably devised, or 40 years back perhaps, devised a long-term energy plan to be sure that as you're growing, then you have your energy coming. But we have to invest in it. People always make the assumption that everybody has the same capital resources. We don't. I mean, Ghana, I think one of the things that perhaps we should think about very strongly is empowering the private sector.
Are we doing that?
I think now we are doing a better
engine of growth.
Yes, I think we are doing a better job now.
Still not taking that position.
No, we have. We are clearly taking that position. And if you say we haven't, then I probably say that. Then you probably don't know what's going on around. I mean, government has clearly said, even infrastructure, they want the private sector to take the lead. When you look at the Ghana Cares Obata project,
equipped, because it's a different thing.
I'll tell you something. You are asking about FDI numbers. Today, I had the surprise of my life when we were looking at our numbers. The number of Ghanaian projects being recorded now at GIPC topped $3 billion. It's never happened in our economy. Why is that? Because now we are seeing quite a bit of private sector aggression in the market. We are seeing a lot of private sector go into areas that we thought were dominated by foreign investors. But yes, we haven't built capital. We haven't fomented capital formation in our economy as much as others have. I mean, if today you're looking for billionaires in the Ghanaian economy, I'm sorry, you won't find any. In Nigeria, you can name about 3 or 4. But it's not unique to Ghana. On the whole continent of Africa, out of maybe only a little less than 400 companies have a turnover of $1 billion and more a year. And you find that most of them are parastatals or multinationals. We have to build indigenous capital. We have to build indigenous entrepreneurs who will grow to become blue chip companies and business people. If you can't grow your local economy, then it becomes difficult. Then you have to rely on foreign capital.
To do that. Let's come to the FDIS. I mean, it's been quite challenging numbers. Let's even look at half of this year, what we are seeing compared to previous years. the numbers haven't been that good, some would say.
Well, I don't know how you measure the numbers not being good.
Yeah,
I mean,
let's look at
there
it
is
in
no
growth
standard. There's no standard measurement.
Where you were previously
Yes.
recording billions, and now the numbers
Well,
have declined.
yes, but
And
it's not a
that
linear. It's not a linear process. So maybe by half year, and if you go through,
Let's half year, for instance.
yes, but
under
if you look at it,
$500 million.
yes, it's a bit. It's
200, yeah?
No. We are around $500 million.
Yes.
If you look at
If
the
you
previous years,
compared to previous
it's
years.
yes, it's about the same. But by the end of the year, when other investments kick in, then you realize that suddenly you've gone above the billion.
So you think that the numbers are going to pick up strongly as things
You
go
know,
on?
I always need to correct this erroneous view that you
About
have.
FDIs.
About
yeah.
FDI. FDI is not like walking to the market and buy tomatoes.
Yeah.
You might meet a potential investor in January, convince him, and he'll do his own due diligence, which might take 4 months. He might come and decide that, okay, let me look at the market. What are the offerings? Is there a strategic view of the country? Yes. His own people will come and do their pre-feasibilities, etc., which could take another 1 year. So the fact that you went to visit him in January doesn't mean that same year you are going to see money. But you will see his interest. And that interest can actually materialize maybe a year after.
Yeah.
You know? But the important thing is, in today's competitive world, and I'll tell you, it's really fiercely competitive. I mean, I go to conference and you see almost every country is trying to pitch very strongly, making cases. Countries are doing project presentations. They are taking the major projects in their country and they are talking to investors and trying to let them know what is happening in the country. And then that's when the investors also go back and look, okay, let me look at Ghana versus Nigeria. Why would I go to Ghana and not Nigeria?
I'm looking at where you have come from with the tremendous numbers that you had posted before. Some are saying they're looking at last year and even half year. We are not doing well on FDIs. Are we
But
right in making...
I've just tried to correct that in your calculation.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like that.
Okay,
You
so we
can't
should
say that
wait for the end of-
it's not a linear thing that you expect that every month you have 100 million. No. That is why we are always very cautious about, and yes, and it's not just us. I just came from an UNCTAD conference.
It's a regional thing?
Where they're saying that be very careful about numbers you let out. Because even when the numbers come in, and I learned one thing very strongly, that even Ghana, we may be underestimating the foreign direct investment in our economy.
Why?
Because for quite a while, we only recorded what came through GIPC. And when the company came to register. But let's take a $2 billion investment. It all doesn't come in 1 year. And not all of it comes in cash. Sometimes it's equipment. They import the equipment. And the equipment might be the bulk of the project cost. So let's take an investment like the Central Refinery that I'm talking about. They registered last year. They registered with a certain amount, maybe 400 million. But we do know that the cost of the plant that they've put there is $1 billion and some. So if you are just to take what they registered with, you lose out the extra that has built the factory, the refinery. Yeah. So we ourselves over here are looking at it very intensely.
How do you capture, bring in all
that
these
is a
numbers?
very
Because
good...
just like giving the economy, there are some who still argue that we are still not capturing all the activities that is happening within the economic space.
It's
and
possible.
The economy is bigger than what we are recorded.
I strongly
what
believe
steps
so.
is GIP also taking to ensure that, listen, there are more things happening in terms of FDIs that is not being captured and it has to be captured?
Yes, indeed. You are absolutely right. I mean, we have all sorts of reforms. We are actually using technology to try and then capture all the necessary data that is available out there. And sometimes the investor comes, starts his project. As he's going on, he doesn't need to come back to GIPC. When he adds more capital, he doesn't need to come to GIPC. Now, there have been at least 7 global conventions on how FDI is recorded. And in some countries, they record 1, the private capital that comes in through equity. 2, all private debt. And what they mean private debt? Debt that comes into private entities for development. In some countries, they even add what comes inside on a B2G basis. Because it's all project driven, it's investment. And then thirdly, they also capture intercompany cash movements. For example, if a company here generates its profits, instead of sending it back, they decide to reinvest, it's foreign direct investment. But in Ghana, we only take the cash that comes in and the equipment. And the equipment, we have to go through and find out from the bill of lading and validate with GRA and other companies what they are. There are many others who partner private sector and do their business, and they don't even come, they just only come and register without a notional amount. But they bring in their equipment, etc., and we don't capture it. The important thing is how to capture all these. And many other countries have different ways of doing it. And in fact, it's become an issue because then when you say, oh, Ghana had 2 billion FDI and maybe country Y had 4 billion FDI, they may be measuring different things.
I mean, at least you're working to correct it. But
we
I get from you that if you look at the global milieu and the regional challenge, listen, the
in
numbers
some countries
are not bad, but at the end of the year, we'll get a true picture.
You get a true picture of what came in the course of that year. Let me tell you something. Very interestingly, in some countries, they actually do it on project basis. So a major company wants to do a major project elsewhere. For example, the reason why African FDI went up in 21 was because of one transaction in South Africa, which was a couple of billions. It was an intercompany transaction, right? It's not a normal thing like they've seen an opportunity, they brought the money. It was a sale and a purchase and of a business in a place. But it was a big amount. So it took the total level of FDI in Africa up. But many other countries would not have even recorded that. In some countries, they actually license FDI projects. And they license them on project basis. So if they sign a project and says that we are building a dam this year, we are starting a dam this year, and the cost is X billion, they announce that, yes, we have an FDI project of X billion, and it's validated.
Mr. Wiafe Grant is the Chief Executive of the Ghana Investment Promotions. And when we get back, we'll look at jobs. What is being done to ensure that out of these projects, when the investor promise X job, indeed, they do deliver on it. Respecting the country's investment laws, a big challenge. How do we get around it and ensure that when they come in here to do business, they do respect them? What about respecting or allowing a space that can be given to indigents when it comes to investment? This is PM Express. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about investment and in the current global milieu challenge. Where is Ghana placing, bringing in all these investors in these times? Mr. Grant, job creation. Someone said that when we have all these projects coming, what is there to track and ensure that when I promise you that I'm going to generate about 2,000 jobs out of that project, I do generate the investor George Wiafe?
Well, it's a good question to ask, and we have to do a lot more with tracking. We actually have a tracking unit that does a bit of it, but it's very difficult. I mean, but somehow we are seeing some very interesting results.
They are delivering on the jobs that they promised.
Some of them. I mean, let me give you an example. If you look at some of the big sectors in the economy, most of which have been driven by FDI, a lot of people don't look at it that way. For example, mining in this country, significantly in the past, has been from foreign direct investment. All the big mines were foreign companies. But they employed significant number of people. If you look at a lot of the miners in formal mining companies, were employed by FDI inputs. If you look at the banking sector, till recently, when we allowed banks, local banks to indigenous banks to come in, or indigenous banks came into the market, most of it was foreign direct investment. But they employed quite a significant number of people.
So they are generating the jobs.
The jobs are being generated.
And the mechanisms are in place to ensure that.
But we don't even need to put the mechanism in place. Once you come and invest that amount of money, you need to employ people. You're not going to bring 200 people from Europe. It's too expensive. You can bring people and train them. Let me give you the last one. In the mobile technology and telephony space, significantly driven by foreign direct investment. Most of the companies were foreign direct investment companies, from the MTNs to the Tigos to the Vodafone. They brought in some money. Of course, there was Ghana Telecom before. But if you look at the number of people and jobs that have been generated from the activities over the period, significant. Significant.
Yeah.
So you see a true correlation between foreign direct investment in a country and the ability for it to create jobs. And my view, and we've had very good conversations, is to empower the private sector to do the same. We have the conversation with the Ministry of Finance on what we are now calling the Ghana Mutual Prosperity. Is the partnership between foreign direct investment and indigenous direct investment. And like I told you earlier, when I looked at the numbers, the Ghanaian projects that are being registered at GIPC, I was surprised.
And that's what I'm coming to. I looked at the FDI report half year, and I've seen a serious uptick in Ghanaian businesses.
Yes.
What is happening?
Because...
Or what are you doing differently? What are you telling the Ghanaians about owning the economy as well?
You know, what we've done in the past, in the recent past, is that whenever we go out on our outward missions, we try to take private sector people along with us. We have been successful for quite a while, but in recent times, with the global crisis, the cost for private entrepreneurs, especially the small ones who are at startup capital stage, and even those at the growth capital stage, find it expensive to travel with us. But ideally, we want to take the private business people with us, so that they meet the investors.
And that is what is helping with the pickup in the Ghanaian.
That is helping with the pickup significantly.
In the Ghanaian investors.
We were in Latin America, and their appetite to meet Ghanaian business people was overwhelming. I mean, they started blaming us. Oh, we should have brought a lot more people. We want people in the agro-processing sector. We want people in the equipment manufacturing sector. We want people in the, the technology space. And because they do not know the continent, and you go there and show them what the continent has, you show them what you're doing in their country, they get excited. And they want to meet your private business people. Because what we are selling is not just come and invest in our country. Come and partner with Ghanaians to grow the economy. They are capable Ghanaians here. What Ghanaians lack, as simplistic as it seems, it's comparatively the capital base. Because if today we have a project that is maybe $500 million, it will be difficult to find maybe one single Ghanaian company to do unless it goes for debt. Because we haven't facilitated or stimulated capital formation even within our own private sector.
So in some countries,
it's very important to do so. We need to create billionaires. We need to find maybe 4 of the largest in their sectors and push them
and help them.
And help them to grow. People will say, well, that's selective. But at the end of the day, they are the ones who invest in the economy and create more jobs.
Mr. Green, when you go to other countries, they are quite heavy on the joint partnership and the local content bit as well. How are we doing in that space in the midst of all this capital attraction to ensure that, listen, at all these big projects, show me the JP, show me the Ghanaian content, show me the arrangement to gradually pass on this technology to Ghanaians? Well,
interesting question, because the jury is still out on local content. I mean, many technically will tell you, well, yes, this was very relevant maybe a few decades back, but with globalization and the freedom of people moving across to invest, etc., we ought to be careful so that we do not exclude or we do not cut out or disenfranchise potential investors to the economy. But local content is good in the sense that it prescribes certain rules or conditions to enable foreign direct investors partner with local people to grow their business. In some cases, in some countries, there are areas that are reserved for local people. Some think it's a great idea, some think it's not a great idea. In other places, there are certain things, like there's a minimum capital requirement. Something is a great idea, something is not a great idea. The important thing is that at the end of the day, for me, what is more important is local inclusion. That at any point we should include local people. What I know as an investment banker is that very often you want your people to be immersed in the cash flow business of the investment, not necessarily only their ownership. Because when a company sets up, right, and it comes, the real business, the real money maker is in the business. The running of the business is not in the equipment they own, etc., etc. And when you plant your indigenous people in there, you create a bigger chance for them to create wealth.
So you bring me to a point about what is the latest, and you've spoken about it on our investment laws. One, the bit about the capital, and two, some quick clarity on that. The whole argument and the never-ending debate about the fact that the retail space has to be reserved for maybe Pajo from Mantima Kebi, who is doing that his job. What is the latest on that?
You know, we never really said that it shouldn't be. My view was that if we engage in protection alone, it will be difficult for our traders. We need to support them so that they can compete effectively. You can support them with lower cost of capital. You can support them with access to capital. And you can support them with smart contracting. So, for example, we'd say that, well, yeah, any procurement by government that uses tax money, the contract should go to a Ghanaian. Never mind where he gets his goods from. But if he's a Ghanaian, he's a contractor and he is going to import the things. If he makes any commissions, etc., it goes to the Ghanaian instead of directly contracting outside. So then you have a better chance of getting your own people to build capacity in there. You know. So, and bear in mind, people forget that retail trade is important. Because it's the only way where you can, it's a way of transmitting your goods into the marketplace. And so they are required, they are needed. But if they have to buy currency on the open market and go and compete with people who don't have to buy the currency, you are going to
but the question is, so what is the law position on that one as we speak right now?
But the law has not changed.
Been, so it is still reserved for indigenous.
Yeah, I think that the areas that are there.
And the $1 million still.
I believe that it's going to be there.
You think you should review it because in our current next phase of investment, you think that law should be reviewed?
I mean, we don't make laws. We recommend. It's Parliament that makes the laws.
Yeah, sorry. Recommend to Parliament what to do.
For me, what is important is what support can we give our retail people? Because the truth of the matter is that globally, that landscape is changing. Today, I mean, where is a marketplace?
We cannot compete.
It's difficult to go. Where is a marketplace? A marketplace can be anywhere. Technology, your mobile phone is a marketplace. You can buy and sell on your mobile phone. You can buy and sell on your computer sitting somewhere. In which case, the chap who has his table in Okanshi might be disenfranchised. How do we engage them into that? So, I mean, there are times when I've had conversations with Guta, for example. I said, can we think of developing a technology product where you guys all go on a platform and you can buy and sell on that platform? And I take, a lot of inspiration from some that have been done already, like Trotro Tractor, Plendify. Plendify today, you can buy and sell goods, export everything on your mobile phone. They will do everything for you. So how do we empower our traders to be able to have access to that so that they are not enfranchised? Then today, I mean, many people are not going to the traditional markets that we know anymore. There are supermarkets who can afford that 1 million easily, who can employ more than 20 Ghanaians easily. And they would still, change the nature of the market because they'll be selling the same goods and services that we have out there. So, yes, there might be areas that you want to have your Ghanaians do it. But to make them more effective, they need support. They need support in terms of cost of capital. They need support in terms of access to the capital to import or export. Luckily, the Pan-African Payment Platform that has been set up by AfriExim and by AFCFT and with support from our central bank means that in Africa, you can trade in our local currencies. That eliminates that middle dollar transaction, which is a major cost to most of our retail people. But yes, they have a role to play. So there must be some sort of level of support. Protecting alone is not enough. You need to support as well.
Mr. Grant, as we wrap up on this discussion, respecting the country's investment laws, coming in, expatriate issues, bringing in people when time is due for them to go, capital investment, taxation and all those things, it's a big challenge. How are we doing to address this challenge that if you come here to do business, I've signed a pact with you, Mr. Grant. These are the rules of engagement. I shouldn't go back on it.
Yeah, it's very important.
Are you trying to ensure that every business person that comes here to do business respect the
these
contract you have signed with him
Yes.
in doing business here in Ghana.
Yes, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't say we've signed a contract with him, but it's law.
Okay.
We have certain regulatory laws.
Yeah.
We have a tracking and we have a monitoring and evaluation unit in GIPC that is constantly out there, you know, inspecting, going to shops, going to factories to find out and find out. And we even have a police officer here to help us do that. But it's difficult. I mean, for example, the issue of technology transfer agreements, which is only there to ensure that when there's a contractual obligation between a local company and a foreign company, the foreign company does not inordinately bleed the local company by putting all sorts of charges that they have to pay. So they have to sign what you call a technology transfer agreement that says that, yes, you put in money, but we only allow you to repatriate what is fair and agreeable between the two of us. And you can't just lap any charges on them, and therefore they have to pay, because that is capital flight. So all these things are very important. I mean, when we are constantly engaging with foreign direct investors and urging them to do the technology transfer agreements. Indeed, Bank of Ghana has actually a couple of years back issued a directive to the banks that no company must be allowed to externally remit if they do not have a technology transfer agreement or have a waiver from GIPC. And that is to ensure that you also are able to grow the local subsidiary and not just bleed them. Maybe I'm using a strong word, bleed them, but you grow them. That you don't just take money out of them, and that will allow them to grow. You can pay the workers fairly, etc. But when there's that obligation, you take all the money out, then you know the local company is starved. So those are very important. Those are very important. It's just not us. It's GRA, it's FDA. There are quite a number of active players in there. In the energy space, there is a Petroleum Commission. In the minerals space, there's a Mineral Commission. They all have rules and regulations that you need to comply with. But at the end of the day, I think there's none more compelling than tax. And tax, funnily enough, is not just foreign direct investors who should comply. Everyone of us should comply.
It looks like we need to do a part two. But Mr. Grant, as you wrap up in a minute, time is not our good friend right now. I saw something in the FDIS, China having the highest project and all the rest. Is it deliberate? And also, you're still doing some active engagement. There are some investors coming in. The officers have been busy so much. As we try and wrap up in a minute, just there were these two questions.
I know, right? It's very difficult. I mean, look at you trying to do this interview. How long it's taking you? And not because I've just been fully occupied. Yes, sir, we are actively engaged because it's tough times. I mean, because of the nature of the problems we have, tax revenue is strained. Government needs to ratchet up to collect more revenues. It's been extremely difficult. Secondly, I mean, we find it extremely difficult now to go borrow. In fact, I don't think it's government's intention to even borrow until it's critical. So you can't borrow. Your revenue sources are strained. Your next source of development capital would be FDIs. And you've heard the Minister of Finance say in his reviews and budget, reviews, the importance of ensuring that GIPC is properly resourced to be able to do this job and go out and do it. And I'm sure you yourself might have noticed that we have been extremely active. You are seeing a lot more of GIPC videos, GIPC activities. We are organizing all sorts of activities here. I mentioned to you, every day this week we've had a delegation in. We've brought in local business people to speak to foreign businesses we've identified business people to do it. And so we are constantly engaging. Almost every month we have what we call a breakfast meeting where we get the agencies to also talk to some of the CEOs who are here. We even have an economic counselors breakfast meeting where we get the economic counselors of all the embassies to come look at our laws so that they can also advise their country people when they're coming here, what they need to comply with, what they don't need to comply. Quite recently, we've been very active on the diaspora front because that's a massive
gold mine.
Gold mine for us in terms of development capital. Was it 2 years ago or last year? According to the International Office of Migration, inward remittances, informal inward remittances in Ghana, I think topped 4.5 billion. That's much more than we're getting from the IMF and much more than we get from FDI. Can you imagine if we attracted this in a formalized way It's FDI, it's foreign direct investment coming foreign. It comes here. It will work significantly. And when you look at many of the developed countries in the world today, China, India, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, most of them at the critical times of their economies, when they're industrializing, FDI from their diaspora.
You spoke about China. In 30 seconds, FDI, China, I've seen them topping in. Is it deliberate or what is doing the trick? In 30 seconds, Mr.
Well,
Grant.
the Chinese, I must say, are very deliberate. But in terms
So they're coming in to do these manufacturing firms?
Yeah, they are. I think what China is doing as a strategy is they're actually exporting their manufacturing expertise to markets. And remember, I spoke about reshoring, onshoring, and friendshoring resulting out of the pandemic and all that, and the fact that new economies looking for new friends, etc. They've identified an opportunity. They are finding it easier to manufacture in Ghana, which is a good thing, because when they set up
cost of doing business.
Yeah, the cost of doing business is low, and they employ Ghanaians. Over the medium term, guess what's going to happen? Many Ghanaians are also going to learn these skills, and they'll do their own thing, and they'll build secondary economies. And you gradually see that it's going to all contribute to national growth. So it's very important. It's extremely important.
Contributing to national growth. Mr. Wiafe Grant is the chief executive of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, telling us what they're doing in the midst of all these challenges. I know the debate will still be going on in your homes and offices about what more we can do to attract more FDI. This has been PM Express Business Edition. Have a great day.